Really wanted to get into this haunted doll situation. You familiar with Annabelle?
A little bit. I try to stay away from anything having to do with any type of inanimate objects grossly reanimating.
Yeah, and this is the doll that inspired the movie The Conjuring. But I believe in The Conjuring, they made it more like a lifelike looking doll. But like the actual doll that inspired it is super creepy. The old school Annabelle doll, I'm sure a lot of you have seen it. It's just creepy to begin with. But if you want to pull up that article,
Yeah.
We'll start talking about what was going on with little Annabelle. I don't like inanimate objects like that look like this. I had two little sisters growing up, and they would bring things home like this. And look at this, people. If you're just listening, there's a little Raggedy Ann doll with it's like a jack-o'-lantern, but with a little human body. This thing is terrifying with red hair. Let's go to the top. What is this? What is the headline here? I feel like this one was a good one. Yes, of course. And where is this? Is this the Post?
Yeah, there's
Post?
just some random video in here of like the airline chick that was running drug trafficking, but then right underneath it is the article. I don't know why it's
so
there.
She's not demonically possessed, or she might be.
I thought that was Annabelle for a second. I'm like, is this actually her? She looks kind of, too new to be.
That's hilarious. This is like them trying to tell you, like, look, this lady's also. But I want to read the headline really quick because I think it's hilarious. Demonic Annabelle doll safely back in custody after claims it escaped, caused havoc in NOLA. Shouldn't have moved her, is the quote. All right, let's see about this. You want to go up just a bit? Sorry.
Yeah, hang on. Let's fly
without seeing the other demonic lady at the top there.
Yeah.
The real life Annabelle doll was blamed for a string of alarming incidents by conspiracy theorists. So it must be true already off the bat, right? That claimed it escaped while on tour in New Orleans. But its owner confirmed it's safely back home and was never out of his control. The diabolical and supposedly demonic Raggedy Ann doll, fictionalized in the Conjuring movie series, made a pit stop at Ghost City Tours office in the Big Easy in mid-May, the same week of a daring, a daring prison breakout and a devastating fire at a former plantation nearby.
Was that the one where like the 12 guys just ran out the front door?
Was it 12? It was a bunch.
Some crazy amount of guys escaped.
If it's the one I'm thinking about, they like had to warn the little community, like, hey, these people are insane. Lock your doors. But I like that they're now like all these bad things happening in the area. It might be this doll's fault. There's other articles connecting it to like fires breaking out. It's like it's got to be Annabelle. The timing, it says, led to speculation that the doll was behind the chaos. What does it say on this doll thing here? Like, what is it?
It says, "Warning: positively do not open."
And she's just like seated in a box. Oh man! But she's safely back behind lock and key at the Warren Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut. Owner Tony Spara told the Post. So yeah, there were reports, I don't know if you guys saw this, that it was missing. And there were people saying it was like just wreaking havoc across the country. All these bad things, whether it was weather problems, these prison breakouts, it must have been Annabelle's fault. We should go into the backstory of Annabelle's. I love this old video of that man in the museum.
Yeah.
Let's listen to this guy tell this story about Annabelle. I love people like this because whenever I hear people like this talk, it's like I love thinking about because he's like a tour guide in a weird museum. How many times you have to tell this exact story? So let's hear from them.
The Raggedy Ann doll.
Yes, that's probably the worst thing we have in this whole museum. That Raggedy Ann doll was given to a nurse in 1970 by her mother as a Christmas present. Mm-hmm. But as most girls do, even 28 years old, she would take the doll to bed with her, wrap her arm around and go to sleep. I'd do the same thing with a pillow. But then she started taking it to the breakfast nook, where the arms one morning went onto the table.
Not the breakfast nook.
Now, she lived with another nurse, and they shared the expenses of the apartment, which was 4 blocks away from Hartford Hospital.
Right.
At that point, they told the girls about the incident, and one said, "I know a medium." So they held a seance that night. Mm-hmm. That was the beginning of many seances with this doll. They would come home at night, and the woman had told them, the medium, that
just
there was a
for those who
spirit
are
of a
listening, we are looking at the doll in a glass case. There's a sign above it that says "Danger," do not touch anything.
And then the positively do not open sign is posted right below it.
Yep. And the man speaking, who's like the tour guide here, looks like a failed funeral home director. Like
yeah.
This is a great job for him. He looks like, he reminds me of Paul Bearer a little bit.
That and cross with Alfred Hitchcock.
For sure. That's a great cross. All right, let's hear what else he has to say.
6-year-old child in the doll by the name of Annabelle, who had been killed outside of their apartment house in an automobile accident. Well, there was such a child, but God does not allow a child's spirit to go into a doll. This was a devil, a demon inside the doll, which was impersonating the spirit of a child. Well, they treated it like it was a child. They got extra clothing, and they got different types of bracelets and things for it, just treating it like a little girl. They would take it for rides. But then they started to become frightened when things were happening in the house, sounds, knockings, rappings, whispering. And they said, oh, Annabelle must want another seance. So they would hold a seance going deeper down that road of no return. Then they would take the doll and put it on the bedroom, in the bed, and they'd leave it there. They'd come home after midnight, the 2 girls, open up the door, and this doll would be standing there waiting for them. Now that doll can't stand. You can see it has very flimsy legs, but I've seen it stand. Now these are all the diabolical manifestations that we...
How does he just say
nonchalantly?
Yeah.
But I've seen it stand.
And how did the reporter not be like, wait a minute? Can you tell me about that?
Are you talking about physically you walked in the room and it was standing? Right. Or did you physically watch this thing bring itself to its feet?
Right. The Chucky movies did freak me out as a kid.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine that would be what's going on here. This is even creepier. But like, I'd like to hear more details from this gentleman.
Let's get it.
We look for. Well, as time went on, one of the fiancés of one of the girls said, get rid of the doll, burn it, throw it away. He wanted to get rid of that doll. He fell asleep one Saturday afternoon. And the doll was put right across from him on a couch. And the girls were fooling around saying, well, now, Annabelle, you help us to clean up. Just like it was a little kid. Yeah. All of a sudden, he woke up with a start. He was sweating. He said, my God, he said, what a nightmare I just had. I dreamt that Annabelle there was strangling me, and he had marks on his throat. Was it psychosomatic? Well,
we don't pause it real quick again before we continue. Imagine being the guy being strangled by a little doll. Like, how do you think he came right out and be like, look, this doll just jumped on me. She's slashing me with her soft little doll hands?
Dude, I mean, he just said that he had marks on his neck and then followed it with, was it psychosomatic?
Right.
And it's like, well, I don't know. Was he the only one seeing the marks on his neck?
Right. Yeah, I don't know about this story. She's creepy, but I don't know about this story, mister.
Yep.
But let's continue, because he tells a good story.
Walks over to the doll, he picks it up, and looks at it, and throws it right across the room. You're nothing but a rag doll, you couldn't hurt anyone. With that, 7 slashes appeared on his body, 4 in the chest and 3 on the stomach. The blood came right through his shirt. Wow. Now they were all frightened. Things were flying around the room. They called the High Episcopal Canon in Hartford. He called Father Richard Nolan. Father Nolan called us. We went to the house. Exorcism was performed immediately in the home and over the people. I took the doll back to my home here where it's in the museum.
Not to get too much in the weeds of denominations, but I want to point out that he called the Episcopal Church, which these days it's got some issues, but that the Episcopal Church then reached out to the Occult Museum for help. So there's like this weird marriage of the Occult Museum and the Episcopal.
It sounds like a jurisdictional issue, kind of.
Yeah. It's like we actually need the Ghostbusters for this one to assist with a doll exorcism.
Like, we really didn't want to call you, but like, hey, dude.
We know this is right up your alley, man. Can you help us out real quick? We're in a pinch. All right, let's hear it.
At one time, I had it just sitting in a chair, but a priest came here one day and he said, Ed, this doll is supposed to be infested by devils. He picks the doll up and he throws it across the room, just like the young man in the house. God is more powerful than the devil. I said, yes, Father, you're right. God is more powerful than the devil, but no priest is, no man. On his way home in a brand new car on Route 84, the car went out of control, almost head on into a tractor-trailer truck. It was demolished, and the priest was almost killed. The last thing he remembered seeing was that doll. A detective, a homicide detective that Lorraine and I were working with, wanted to see the museum. We work on many cases of where children are murdered or whatever. And he came down, he looked all over, and he said, you know, Ed, of all the things here, I can't take my eyes off that doll. At that time, it was still in a chair. The phone rang. I said, I'll be right back. Don't touch anything in this room. Everything in here is unholy, unblessed.
Hang on. Demonic foreshadowing. Let me guess. He touched the doll.
Oh, no.
The opposite of what you would find in a church. Well, I wasn't even up there talking for 10 minutes. I heard him coming up the stairs. He had to come through the passageway into the Halloween room and up into the kitchen.
Halloween room.
This man was a huge guy. He was about 6'3", 250 pounds, used to seeing grisly sights. He was sweating. He couldn't speak. He was trembling. I thought he was having a heart attack. I told him to sit down and I'd call an ambulance. He said, no, Ed, it isn't that. I said, well, what's wrong? I don't want to talk about it. That's what he said. I don't want to talk about it. Sometimes a little macho and cock, you know.
Sure.
And Lorraine walked in and he looked at Lorraine, and I guess he found it easier to talk to a woman than a man. He said, I'll tell her about it, but I don't want her to ever talk about it again. Well, she didn't have to. The doll had been in the chair over in one corner of this room. When I came in, the doll was over in another corner on the floor. Everything had been knocked over, like there was a terrible struggle here. There was a terrible struggle. This man had picked that doll up. Wow. His aura had mingled with the aura of that doll, and something so terrible occurred.
Ding, ding, ding. I called it.
How did you see that coming?
I don't know. I'm a medium, I guess. Stay away from me.
That he resigned from the police department 3 months later and moved to California.
Is that right?
A young man came in here one day with a bunch.
Wait a minute. He retired?
Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah.
Raggedy Ann forced him into retirement.
Yeah, and he moved to a state where there's more demons.
Oh, come on.
Bunch of college students. And after I told him about the doll and many other things, he came over here. I was standing over in the other corner. He started tapping on this glass and said, I don't believe any of this is a bunch of hooey. He said, if that doll can do anything, let it do something to me right now. Put a slash on me. I put him out of the building. He was on a motorcycle. 3 hours later, he was dead. The girl that he was with said that he was laughing about the doll when the motorcycle, just like the car, went out of control, hit a tree, and killed him instantly. The girl.
The scary thing about this is the guy's eyes. If you're watching, why does he have a giant black eye?
I think he's got two of them.
They're both black, aren't they?
Yeah,
he looks like a raccoon.
It looks like he hasn't slept in like 15 years.
Or did the doll do it?
Maybe he's just been kept awake all night by this doll.
Or is he doing the things and he's using the doll?
Or is he just old? Has he just gotten so old and he just hasn't aged gracefully at all?
I do want to say though, like sometimes inanimate objects do seem possessed. Have you ever come across anything like that?
I mean, when my great grandmother died, we got this little plastic Cubs hat from her, and we had it sitting on top of a old school tube TV, and the TV at the top was pretty wide. I want to say it was at least like 7-8 inches across the top, because it was fat TVs back in the day, you know. And this hat was no bigger than like this, you know, just a little tiny like Sunday ice cream hat. Yep. And we would come home, no fans, no nothing on, you know, door closed, open the room up, and the hat was always laying on the floor. And it was like, how is this hat falling off of this TV that's completely flush? Right. You know, there's no wind or anything in the room. Like, so yeah, for a while we thought that hat was possessed until we moved out of there and it stopped happening. So I don't know now.
Grandma trying to just make sure you don't forget about her.
Yeah, and it was like, damn it, Grandma, like stop, you know.
You're freaking me out, Grandma. Yeah, I mean, my parents brought home an Alf doll. Remember Alf?
Alf was awesome.
Alf freaked me out.
But the dolls used to creep me out pretty much.
It was an alien that ate cats. Like that's the show. And I remember just being like, we have to bury this thing immediately. And we also had a My Buddy. I don't remember those. I think you're a little younger than me.
No, I remember those too. Those were super creepy.
Really creepy. Like I don't know what it was about the 90s with trying to just instill fear in children with the dolls, whether it was Chucky or Annabelle. But the overall thing of this is just, I'm so interested in the economy of fear, because it's like this, they're just selling something. This guy's narrative is very manufactured, but I do think crazy things do happen. Like I went to this one really old house once to write a story, and I was walking through with this guy who claimed to like talk to ghosts, and there was an old Victorian doll in this one room on a like a old sofa, and he stopped and he goes, that doll is demonic. And I looked at it, I'm like, I don't know about that, but it's a creepy looking doll. It was from the 18th century, I think. And it was used with it was a China doll. And it was used by a traveling salesman who would go around and he would dress the doll in the clothes that he was trying to sell to women. It was creepy.
That's pretty creepy. Yeah.
I mean, just that alone is creepy. But he was like obsessed with how weird this doll was, and he did some weird like pendulum thing to prove to me that it was possessed. But I could see his hand moving when he was telling me, see how the pendulum is swinging? I'm like, your hand is doing this. But I spent a lot of time in that area, and I would hear from multiple different people that doll was possessed. And one person told me about this time there was like a bunch of like a field trip that went to this. It's like a historical museum, and kids witnessed the doll, kind of like what he was saying, fly across the room from the chair or the sofa across the room. I'm like, okay, who knows? Maybe it was just a freak accident. Maybe there was a strong draft. And I went back to that town to finish up some other stuff that I was writing, and I wound up speaking to one of the young women who was like around my age at the time, but she was on that field trip when that happened. So I was talking to her about the houses and all the hauntings people were telling me about. And she was like, I was in that house and I saw the doll fly around. I'm like, I don't know. You ever hear the like the stone tape theory?
Mm-mm.
It's like the idea that when there's like a violent death or just like a traumatic death, that the energy could be sealed into a location. For the stone tape theory, I believe it's an inanimate object. Like it could be a house, it could be a doorknob, a chair, a doll, and people believe that that's a thing. Yeah, I don't know if I believe in that, but sometimes I wonder if people can like psych themselves out to believe that can happen. Like when you go to a battlefield, and Antietam's not too far from here, and a lot of people died there. It's impossible to go to a place like that and not kind of feel the presence of all the death. So I'm like, maybe sometimes people just transmit these feelings onto these things. And a place like that, the occult museum with that doll, I think it attracts a certain type of crowd that wants to like believe in that thing.
Oh, absolutely.
So Annabelle, I guess from other articles I was reading, there's a lot of sensationalized headlines saying it had disappeared and was running around, and people were saying, it was starting fires and, getting these prisoners to break out. But the story, according to the owners, and it wasn't in that article, was that they always had it and it was fine. And then you come to find out there's a new Conjuring movie coming out in like August or September. So I'm like, is this just a PR?
Just like how they did with Smile, when they would just have like 4 or 5 creepy people go to the basketball game, and at halftime the camera would just go around and you just see people like...
Right. Is that all this is? just a PR stunt? I don't know, man. I don't know. I whatever it is, that doll is creepy to me, and I don't trust it.